So because I am going to record this for the public, I'm going to go ahead and go through some things that you may say, why are you doing all this with one person in the audience? But that's why we're going to do it. And like I said, I'm going to try to be rather quick, but it will be available for those who want to have it recorded. And we'll answer any questions, obviously, that you have, Joe. And so we are looking at the 2023 proposed budget. I'm going to spend most of my focus on the general fund because that's obviously where most of our dollars are. And then I'll also talk about the other funds and the impact that will have. So, excuse me. So the one I'd like to just point out on the first slide here is that we're really looking at the 2023 proposed budget, comparing that to the 2022 budget. This slide on general revenue, if you look at the 2021 actuals, you may say, why was that so high? If you take out the bond dollars that were tied into the refinancing that we did, then you would notice that that number drops down significantly and is much more in line with where our other numbers are. And so really, as you can see from this, a large majority of our revenue comes from our real estate taxes. Over 50% is in that one line item. And so we count on that pretty heavily. And that's where, like I said, the majority of the revenue. The next area that's also a very large area where we have quite a bit of revenue is in what's the real estate transfer tax and also in LST tax. When we're looking at comparison of 2022 budget to 2023 budget, we're looking at an increase of roughly $370,000 in revenue. And most of that comes in the areas of the real estate tax. There's about $150,000 in real estate tax increases, and this has to do with new properties that are brought online from new homes that are built or businesses that are being built, construction with those. And so we've had that pretty steady increase in that area over the years. And like I said, this year is about 150,000. There's also 70,000 in other taxes, which is, like I said, the real estate transfer tax and the LST tax. We anticipate that the real estate transfer tax will probably be most likely flat, maybe actually go down a little bit. We're seeing a decline in housing interest, although because we do have some new housing still in town, we anticipate that we're still going to have some transfers that are going to happen next year. But that being said, LST tax, we're anticipating an increase and a pretty substantial increase in two areas. One, AmeriHealth came on this year, so we were counting on that. And then Vanguard came in and took over where Sunoco was on the Ellis Preserve, and they filled that area. So we anticipate that revenue coming in. If we can go ahead and, yes. You can't what? Oh. Can't hear it on YouTube. Hold on one second. All right, let's try again. Can you hear me now? And it'll take a minute. It's always a delay going out to you. But you're still not hearing me, huh? This is testing whether or not we can hear. Still not picking anything up, Rose. All right, let's do. Let's go ahead. We're going to do this. We're just going to go ahead and record the volume this way, and then if we need to, we can overlap it with the YouTube. So I've been talking about revenues, but real quick, just a summary. We're saying there's going to be an increase in revenues of roughly 370,000, of which 150,000 of that is in real estate taxes. And then another roughly 70,000 is in other taxes, which is real estate transfer tax and LST tax. The other big area that we saw an increase, and I say big in that when you've been getting about $15,000 in interest and you anticipate getting $60,000 of interest, that's a big increase. We made an investment with our funds that we're really pleased with, that we're getting between 4% and 5% interest. So that we think that's good. And so we anticipated picking up about 45,000 there. And then there's going to be also some increase in revenue in the area of other sources of revenue. And so we've been talking with the municipal authority who we provide services for, and have let them know that we're going to be doing an increase in the costs that we share with them related to the administration area. And I'll talk about a couple positions that we're going to hire. One of those is a part-time bookkeeper that we're splitting between the municipal authority and the township. So that's pretty much revenue in where we are. Again, it's about a $370,000 increase. Then let's go on to expenses. And in expenses, I see that, or we can see, if you look at where we were in 2022, we thought we'd be about 10,500. I mean, 10,500,000. And in 2023, we're projecting 11,229,000 or 299, which works out to be about $790,000 increase. Of that $790,000 increase, 370 of that, 368,000 is in wage increases. And then there are 348,000, almost 350,000 in position increases. And those positions, we're looking at hiring a new police officer. And then we're also looking at hiring, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, a part-time bookkeeper and a part-time codes person. And then within the budget is also, we're starting to experience officers who are leaving. And as they leave, then we've got to backfill those positions. But it takes, like several years before a new officer is equal to what a current officer is. In fact, Chris, our chief of police, says, it usually takes several years just for the officer to get to the point where they've experienced enough things here in Newtown to be able to do all the things that we would want them to do. And so with that in mind, we at least want to get them through their initial training period. So we want to bring 2 new officers on in January because we have 2 officers who are leaving in June. And that way we have enough overlap to get these new officers up. So that really leaves about $70,000 that's not accounted when you're looking at the increases that is there. And so I was just looking at some of the other increases that we have, and we've put in $20,000 for a grant writer. We have several employees that we've hired this year who in the backfilling positions. And when we did that, the new employees have needed like family health insurance versus just single health insurance. And in that case, we picked up about $38,000 in costs there. We have a vehicle replacement program that we've been doing for the public works. We've added $25,000 to that, which takes it up to $75,000. And the ultimate goal is about $250,000. We've been doing a road repaving program that we've been trying to build and add $50,000 to for the last 8 years. And so we're going to add another $50,000 this year, and that will take us finally up to $400,000. And add that with what we get from liquid fuels, we'll start to be able to cover what our costs are there in that area. And in addition to that, we're well aware that our playgrounds, many of them are aging, and the issue is not so much that we can't kind of maintain what we have, except for the new requirements for playgrounds keep changing so that they're safer, so that they're ADA compliant. And so we are starting to build a program for a playground replacement. And that's we put $25,000 again, just a single playground at one park can easily run about $200,000. And we have 5 playgrounds at the different parks. And so if you start thinking about those numbers and the fact that they're going to have to be replaced on an ongoing basis, we think we need to be probably putting aside about $100,000 to $150,000 a year for ongoing playground upgrades and maintenance on those. So those alone are more than the $70,000 that's left. And so we have gone through and looked at all of our expenses. And I'm going to quickly kind of just head through this sheet that you see on the screen now, kind of lumps different things together. I'm going to quickly go through our different departments and talk about what we are going up and down. And I'm going to keep that pretty quick. But if we go to the next screen, we're going to look at legislative, and we're actually decreasing legislative expenses. We've added in $20,000 for the grant writer, but we've taken out $20,000 that we had built into the budget for a newsletter that we were going to do that was in addition to the one that we're doing now. We've also reduced the amount of money that we spend on the third-party communications person by about $15,000. And so with all of those changes, it got us down, and we're about $16,000 less than what we're paying this year. And so, or what we budgeted this year in the legislative. Moving on to administration, the increases there have mostly to do in the areas of benefits, and then a couple minor changes in a few other categories. But the benefits was the big issue in that one. Under the finance office, there is some changes related to salaries, what we anticipate for the part-time, as well as some salary adjustments. And then because we're making that move and potentially we've also added in, as I mentioned, for potential that we might need to have more insurance. Our finance director is left, and so that was added in as well. Other than that, the department's fairly flat. Moving on to the tax office, very little change in that. It actually went down just a little bit. Legal department, the next one, that also went down 10,000, and that's just based on how we've changed with our solicitor and what we're doing with our solicitor. Under the IT and communications, that has actually gone up a little, and most of that has to do with some cyber software issues, and also some software just increases in our software maintenance that we do. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. As we look at public safety, I think that's the next one. Nope, facilities. This one here, it actually gets allocated back out. But if you look at what our expense was versus the allocation, we haven't put the allocations back yet. We will. There's about a $5,000 increase here, and most of that is just in building maintenance, the typical things that we're experiencing. And there's also a little bit of increase in the area of utilities. I say a little bit, about 3,000 of its utilities. And so that's increasing as well. When we move on to public safety, we've already talked about the big increase in wages has to do with hiring the new police officer and then bringing 2 officers in early. And so we're planning on doing that. And then the other areas, anytime we hire new officers, we have new hire expenses. You got to buy all new uniforms, those kind of things. So that's about a $16,000 increase. We also experienced about $17,000 increase in the police department in the area of in the operations area related to fuel and vehicle insurance, as well as there's a software increase. And then there's also the cost of if we get the grant that we have possibility of, there's costs of the new license plate reader software. That would be a fee that we have to pay. Under the fire department, we have increases in the area of insurance and also fuel for the vehicle, for the fire vehicles. The other big increase that we have in the fire department is that we've started to place $25,000 aside to start for replacing of fire trucks, fire equipment. In that way, 2 years ago, we paid for, or almost 2 years ago now, we paid for the new ladder truck, but they also obviously, as you know, Joe, need a new rescue truck. And right behind that, several years will be a new engine. And so we know that we need probably pretty close to $3 million about every 15 years replacing those vehicles. And so we're doing the math if we start setting aside 25,000 now and we add 25,000 every year, we probably need to be somewhere up around $250,000, $300,000 a year in order to have enough money to be able to replace those trucks, because they don't get cheaper as the process goes. So that's the other big increase that we didn't have before that we put into the budget for 2023. Moving on to ambulance, not a lot of changes there. There is some additional money that we think we're going to have to spend on the facility itself. And then the other big change is just fuel. We anticipate a pretty good size increase in fuel. And so that's the changes that are there. Under the codes department, the real big increase, if you look at it, it's not much, but the increases that are there are related to fuel and then salary adjustments, or not salary adjustments, wage increases that we talked about. But not a lot of other changes on the codes department. Under planning and zoning, we did increase some dollars related to engineering expense, but that's really the major expense there, a little bit in advertising. Recycling, we actually reduced what we're spending in leaf disposal, just based on the last several years by about 15,000, but then the recycling contract for our recyclables went up 15,000, so that was kind of a wash. The extra other charge that's in there is about $6,000 for for help finding a new leaf site, hiring a consultant to do that. Under public works, I've already mentioned the vehicle replacement, but the other two major expenses that show up under public works is fuel increase, as well as the vehicle repairs, and then the wage increases that I had talked about earlier. Under street sweeper, there's increase in repairs on that as well. The street sweeper, as it gets older, we have to replace the brushes more often and do that. Snow removal, which is the next one. The winter maintenance, the big increase there, actually it shows us no increase. We reduced the wages on our overtime and temporary help, only kind of back to what we've had for the last couple years. And then we had an increase of about $7,000 in chemicals related to salt. Traffic maintenance, we actually did a reduction of about, the majority of that reduction lies in two areas. One, the area of the signal maintenance itself, but we've just finished a period of spending money on the traffic signals related to capital, with upgrading the signals so that we could put generators on when the power goes out. And so that we had for several years, and that this was the last year that we needed to do that. That pretty much is it with that one. The next one is tree care, or no, road. I jumped too far down. Road, there's a slight increase in materials, but that's pretty much it. Street paving, we talked about this already, the 50,000 that we've increased there, which takes us up to 400,000. Tree care, we've actually reduced about $1,500 related to what we think we're going to actually spend on the arborist. Under historic properties, whoops, stormwater, missed that one. Under stormwater, we're relatively flat. Missed it. Recreation department, again, this is what we give to the Marple Newtown Recreation. And so that's been flat for the 8 years that I've been here. Historic, we reduced that by 2,000. That's more in line with what they're actually spending at the paper mill house that we pay half of the expenses on. Parks, the Parks Department, Most of the increases here have to do with increased park maintenance and also that 25,000 that I talked about for the capital side for replacement of the playgrounds. Under library, we have about $7,000 increase. That's going to help with wages in the library. Under environmental, we have a slight increase, about $1,400, just in a couple areas, mostly with what they've requested to be able to do some projects the environmental advisory is trying to do. Under pensions or debt, there's basically no change, minor change there. And then pensions, there's a change of about 28,000 on our required pension contribution. And then finally, under insurance, there's about 15,000. So when we look at this area of the budget, you can see that there's not any really major increases in any one spot other than when you look at personnel costs. If you take out the personnel costs, the budget's actually relatively flat. Under capital, I'm not going to go through everything. We've been doing presentations on capital quite a bit. The couple things that I would mention, some years it looks like we're spending more than others, and that really has to do with where the grants are, and it also has to do with some of the projects that we're trying to do and spend out of fund balance. Next year, the big things are several cars that we're looking at replacing, the administration car and a codes car. We're continuing to do our document scanning, and then we're looking at potentially some mid-block crossings on Goshen Road, Bishop Hollow Road, and Campus Boulevard. We're looking at potentially permanent speed humps. We've got $120,000 for there. There's also $900,000 for the replacement of Valley Forge Road Bridge, and a few other projects that we've had over the time related to continuing to get the library patio done, traffic calming at St. Albans Circle, and then at Drexel Lodge, we've got connecting the sewer and replacement of the pavilion roof and the replacement of the gazebo and replacement of some wood on the pedestrian bridge. Those are the big capital projects that are coming. As we look at the rest of the funds that we have, go ahead. So we have the streetlight fund. The revenue in the streetlight fund is going to be a little bit short of our expenses. So there probably will need to be an increase in the streetlight tax to be able to cover that. The big increase, if you go on to the expense there, the big increase in that area really has to do with the area of starting to set some dollars aside for future expenses related to replacing the streetlights in the future. And so that's the big increase in that one. The next is the hydrant fund. That actually continues to be pretty self-sustaining, and we actually looked at doing a tax decrease. It's actually equal to what we're going to do the tax increase in streetlights, tax decrease in hydrant. The only difference is more people are impacted with streetlights than are impacted with hydrants. So it actually impacts more homes. And then if we can just keep right on going through, go on down to the next one. ARPA funds, we've received about 1.4 million. We anticipate spending most of that between now, the end of this year and next year. And if you go on down, and that's the anticipated expense for 2023, spending those dollars down. Note proceeds, we have a few $1,000 left in the note proceeds that will be used to help pay for the new roof and guttering at the township building that we need to do. If we go to the bond proceeds, actually, I think I have that backwards. I think the note proceeds are for the roads that we've got, that we're going to do a small road project next year. The bond proceeds are for the roof and the guttering. Next. War on drugs. We've got 15,000, which is actually going to be spent replacing the detective's car that was totaled in an accident. And so we're going to get enough money from the insurance company, but of course they don't give you 100%. And so we're going to put 15,000 to that. That's what that is. Next. Police donations. That's going to be for vest, bulletproof vests for the officers are 6,000. We'll be replacing 4 of those next year. Open space. That money is being spent to put a parking lot in at the Meadow Preserve. Go on. Stormwater, this is our normal expenses where the engineer is going out and inspecting existing stormwater facilities that people have put in. Go on. Liquid fuels, we anticipate bringing in about 435,000, and our expenses are 500 and I believe 15,000. Go on. 511,000, paying off the note that we have, and there's plenty of money in the fund there to make up the difference there. And then I think there's one more. No, that's it. So that's the funds that we're looking at. Joe, do you have any questions? No questions. All right. Well, just for those who are listening, that's our budget in a nutshell. Very short and kind of sweet tonight. Anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at the Township Building. More than happy to answer any questions anyone has. But thank you for attending, Joe, and thank you for those who have listened. Thank you very much.